All right.
Yeah, it's just if they think she's healthy enough.
Right, right. Okay, so we're going to be looking back at this interpretive journey that we started looking at last week. And it's got 5 steps to it. And I thought what we would do first is kind of review those steps real quick. And then we're going to jump into this 2 Kings chapter 6 text, which is, I enjoyed reading through it and thinking through it. But we're going to think through it together. And I think, especially when you do it in a group setting, often you find all kinds of things that you never thought about. I'm expecting that. I'm expecting y'all to bring a lot of things that I haven't thought about, and you know, vice versa. We feed each other in these kind of group settings, so it's fun. So let's review. Step 1 was what? The text. That's right. Get into the text. It's understand the text.
And it was written to for the first listeners, how they would have read it, how they would have understood it.
Right. And we're going to call that the text in their town. Right. So how the original people would have heard this, like let's say it's a letter to the Ephesians, right? How did the church at Ephesus receive that word first? That's the point of this first step. We're trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the first century hearers of that letter. Okay? And what's the question that goes with that?
What did the text mean to the original audience?
Right. What did the text mean to the original audience? That's the question that goes along with that first step. Okay? Step number 2 is what? What is it? Bible.
Was it
Yeah.
measure the
Bridge.
I thought it was
Measure the width of the river. Right. Measure the width of the river. But that separates what? Our town from their town. So the river stands for things like what? Time. Language barriers. Culture barriers.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Grace.
Yeah, exactly. All of those, that's good. All of those things, we have differences. You know, the Ephesian church would have heard their letter probably in a very different way than we do when we first read through it. So what we want to do is try to figure out, what are those barriers? How can we cross this river from them to us? And so we're trying to, and what's the question that goes along with that?
What's the difference between their town and ours?
There we go. Yeah. There you go. What's the differences? Okay. Step number 3. This is, yeah, cross. It's got a weird name, right?
Cross the principalizing bridge.
Principalizing bridge. Principalizing bridge. Right? And we cross that principalizing bridge. What's the question we asked here?
What are the theologist principles and text?
Yeah. So somebody say, what does that mean? What are theological principles?
God's principles.
God's principles, right? Mm-hmm. What are the main principles God is trying to teach us? That's the question on number 3. Step number 4. Consult. What was that?
Map. Biblical map.
The biblical map. Okay. Right. Yeah, I know that picture is very handy. So after you get across the bridge, there's a big sign there, right? That's the biblical map. And what's the question we're asking here?
How does each principle fit with the rest of the Bible?
Right. So we've identified principles in the text here. Now we're saying, how do those principles fit, you know, Old Testament, New Testament teachings that we know. So we're trying to put the map together in the context of the whole Bible. So you might, if you like writing words down for each step, context, you know, general context might be a good words to think on that step. And then finally, number 5.
Grasp the text in our town.
Grasp the text in our town. And finally, we're getting to our town, and that is, in a word,
How does it affect me today?
how does it affect me today? Right.
I guess how should a Christian live out these principles in our time?
Great. Yes. So this is the application layer. The final step of our Bible study hopefully will be application that we can actually put to use in our life, right? How does this connect with me today? So, all right. Any comments or questions at this point? It's a pretty good quick review of the stages. So let's go to our text then in 2 Kings. We're looking at 2 Kings chapter 8 through 23. All right. And I know several of you have already put some time into thinking through this, but what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps, hopefully all 5 of these today. And if we can get through all of them, I'm going to give you a New Testament text for next week. So we'll do an Old Testament text this week and a New Testament next week, and just go through this process a couple of times together. So what's the first thing we need to do?
Read it.
Read it, right. Okay. Let's do that. So
Now the king of Syria was making war against Israel and consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such a place.
And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there.
Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him and was watchful there, not just once or twice.
Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing, and he called the servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel?
And one of his servants said, not my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in the bedroom.
So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Dothan?
that's fine. Dothan, yeah, either way.
Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city.
When the servant of man of God got up and went out early in the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh no, my lord, what shall we do? The servant asked.
So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them.
And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. The Lord opened the eyes of the young man and saw. Behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha.
So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha.
Now Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria.
So it was when they had come to Samaria that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and there they were inside Samaria.
Now when the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, Elijah, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them?
But he answered, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with your sword and your bow? Set food and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master.
And he prepared a great feast for them. And after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Assyrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel.
Okay. Cool. All right, so we're still in this observation stage up here. We're trying to understand the text in their town. Okay. Yeah, it is, right? It's a historical narrative. And that's a good point, Josiah. When you come to any kind of book, you need to understand what genre you're reading. So that's a great point. So Josiah has identified that we're reading history, right? And you read history a different way than you would read poetry. You would read poetry a different way than you would read a letter, you know, that kind of thing. So that's a great thing to point out. What are the basic questions you would ask of the text to get started, you know, kind of looking through and when? Okay, there's a good one. Characters? Who? Yeah, I'm gonna say who. Where? Okay. Those are kind of the main three to start off with. When, who, where. Okay. So why don't we think through those first? And what I did, and y'all may have a better way of doing it or a way that works better for you. I did a blue pencil for who. I did a green pencil for when, and I did an orange pencil for where. And so I would write who in blue up at the top, and then I would go down and circle or underline things in blue that answer that question, and so on. You know, just a way to look through your text a little bit. Colored pencil? I don't think so. I've got plenty at the building. I know that. Lots of colors. So first of all, let's start with when, since that was the first question thrown out. So when does this happen? How are you going to find that out?
It was when the king of Syria is making war against Israel.
All right. When the king of Syria was making war against Israel. Well, when was that? Yeah. Yeah.
You almost need to go back chapters, or maybe even.
Oh, okay.
In your Bible, sometimes you have an introduction and give you some of that information.
Well, let's do that then. Let's go to 2 Kings 6. Let's start in 2 Kings 6, since that's our text. And then we're going to try to find some clues that figure out when are we.
The problem with 2 Kings is not really in order.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It seems like things happen in this.
And when
possible.
And when I looked to try to find the time frame, I found different dates in different places. And it does say that, you know, a lot of things are not clear as to the time. And one place that I looked at was like during Babylonian captivity, and I thought, well, that's strange. I thought it was the divided kingdom because, you know,
that's probably when it was written. They were trying to figure out when was it written.
Oh, okay. Well, when it took place, though, because you know, Israel was, I mean, I guess it could have been, and they didn't go to Babylon, and they went. That's where Judah went. Right. And so it was a little confusing.
They're probably trying to figure out when was the book itself written.
Okay. And is that what we're looking for? Or are we looking for when it actually happened?
Well, that can be helpful for sure, because you know when it was written, then you know who the original audience was.
Yeah.
So that is a great question to ask, but I was thinking more along the lines of when did this event happen?
Well, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was confused.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, mine had, when I looked to see who the king of Israel was at the time, and it was Joram.
Okay.
They said that the span that he ruled was between like 852 to 841 BC.
Great. Now, where did you go to find that information?
It was in the front of. It was in the introduction.
Oh, okay.
Part of.
In your Bible, you had some.
Well,
stuff?
and then when they had referred me back to Joram, and one of the footnote indicated that time frame.
Do you have a study Bible?
Yeah.
Aha. Got a study Bible that helps her. It's got cool helps in there. Those are very helpful. That's good. The question is, though, if you're looking at the text itself, how are you going to discover these things if you don't have a study Bible?
Well, if you go back to, this is what confused me about the timeline, but if you go back to 2 Kings 5:8. Oh no, I just have a note in my Bible. It doesn't say that. Never mind.
Okay.
But it says Joram. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't say that in the Bible. I'm sorry, I just haven't. So
you have to kind of work your way backwards. Like, okay, so it says King of Israel. It doesn't say who the King of Israel was. So how do you discover who the King of Israel was at this time?
Without looking at external text.
Right. Yeah. Because any external text, any external study had to figure it out from the Bible somehow.
Yeah. Would they have this in Chronicles maybe? Because sometimes they overlap.
Oh, maybe. I didn't think to look at Chronicles.
I mean, I don't know.
It could be. Sure. That would be a good reference to go look at. Although I will say, Chronicles does not deal with the northern kingdom very much. Chronicles really focuses on the southern kingdom of Judah. So I'm not sure if it would have it.
would commentaries have anything?
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm sure commentary would tell you exactly what they thought.
But I had something on at home.
Yeah.
Also, there are books with maps and charts. I like those because you can look at the index and see exactly where it is. It's
sure.
Yeah.
Well, work your way backwards though.
We go back to chapter 3 in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel and Samaria.
Okay, what verse?
Chapter 3, verse 1 and 2.
Verse 1 and 2. Okay, so.
Or I'm sorry, 1.
Very good.
Verse 6 says Judge King Jehoram.
Yeah, and so King Jehoram marched out of Samaria, mustered all Israel. Okay, so that's a great reference. So what we've done, we've gone back in the book itself in 2 Kings. We've noticed, okay, here's the king of Israel, Jehoram, and as you go forward, that's the last king mentioned, and you start seeing all this stuff about Elisha, and it's only referencing back the king of Israel, the king of Israel. So the best reference we have is back to the last one that was on the throne, which is King Jehoram. And King Jehoram was whose son? Ahab's son. We know anything about Ahab?
More than we would want to know.
Yeah. One of the most wicked men in the entire Bible.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, I think Jezebel might have even outdone him.
I think so too.
She's probably the reason why he was so wicked.
Think of anything to do when he wanted David's vineyard was lying his bed and pout, but she had land.
Yeah. So this is the son of Ahab, but that doesn't necessarily mean Jehoram's a bad guy, right? What does it say about him?
He's the son of Ahab.
In verse 2.
He did what was evil.
He did what was evil, but
not like his father or mother, for he put away the pillar of Baal his father had made.
Okay. So he still is an evil king, but not as evil as Ahab and Jezebel, right? So he wasn't that bad. So that gives us a little bit of a flavor of when this happened, right? And like Neva was saying, some of these things may not be total chronological order, like all these collections of what Elisha did. So it may be that he was under one king or another king, you know, during this time. We're not totally sure, but it's kind of in this general time period, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then you said 850 years.
852 to 841.
Okay.
12 years.
Yeah.
He ruled for 12 years.
And that's information that we get from archaeology and from history, and you know, and so that's where we would have to go to a reference book to find dates and things like that, because that the Bible obviously doesn't include dates, but those are very handy. 850 years before Christ, that's what we're talking about. Okay. But then Josiah, I think, said, he pointed out that at the very beginning of our text, it says the king of Syria was making war against Israel. So that's a more specific time elements, you know, like we're situational, like what's going on at the time. Good. Anything else on the when question? Okay. So it's fairly simple, right? I mean, what we did was not difficult. We just flipped back a few pages in 2 Kings to try to figure out where are we. And of course, the more you know about the Bible, the easier this is, right? The more you read through it, the more you're like, oh, yeah, I know exactly who Ahab is. I know, you know, and I know that Ahab had like 3 or 4 of his sons sit on the throne after him. So it's like a little dynasty going on. Ahab's dad was Omri, and the Omrian dynasty was like 5 kings long, you know. You know, the more you know about the Bible, you can fit those kind of things in. Okay. And of course, in the grand scheme of things, we're in Israel, which is the northern kingdom. And we know there's also Judah in the south. So we're in the split kingdom, divided kingdom time period, right? So, all right, anything else? Cool. All right, what's the next one? Who? Who's in this text?
The king of Syria, the Assyrians.
Okay, the king of Syria. Now, Syria and Assyria are 2 different things. Yeah. Yeah, Assyria is going to be a much bigger nation a little bit later. But Syria, we still have Syria today, don't we? What's the capital of Syria? France.
I'm decided.
You want to be shot.
Yeah. I just died inside. I just want to know.
He's joking.
Damascus is the capital of Syria. Oh, okay.
Good answer, Josiah.
So we read about Damascus quite a few times in the Bible. The king of Israel had a lot of interactions with the king of Damascus back and forth. So Israel and Syria were neighboring countries. Syria was to the north, right?
Is that?
Oh, I'm answering Claire questions here.
Has that changed? Because sometimes capitals change.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I'm sure those things have changed. But it was their main city at this time. Syria. What else?
Who else?
Who else?
Israel.
The king of Israel. So we got a king of Syria, we got a king of Israel, who we're believing is probably Jehoram.
And their armies.
Elisha.
Their armies. We've got Elisha, who is who?
Prophet of God.
He's a prophet of God. All right. Who else? Elisha's servant.
Elisha was Elijah's servant, right? Is that what you said? Or
No. In this text, there's a servant who's Elisha's servant.
The one who had leprosy, because
Well, that was oh yeah, this may be that same servant.
Yeah.
If so, it's Gehazi, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're in like one problem.
Okay.
Gehazi
Was
already a leper.
That's right.
The story before.
That's right. Might be a different servant.
Might be a different servant.
So it doesn't mean him.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm sure Elisha got another servant.
It says one of his servants, or is that a different thing?
We've also got the
yeah. One of the servants.
Whoever the king of Syria was talking to about, you know, when he asked the question, he thinks there's a mole in his compound.
Right, right. So one of his servants, as Andrew is pointing out, verse 12, that's the servant of the king of Syria.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a servant, specific servant there that gives the king some information.
The armies of Syria.
The armies of Syria. Mm-hmm.
Elisha's servant.
And Elisha's servant. Mm-hmm. And there's one more, at least.
God.
Yeah. The Lord is in this text. So he doesn't show up until verse 20, but the Lord is here.
He's everywhere.
And he is very important in this text, right? All right. Anything else y'all want to say on the who? So we've just been kind of noticing characters through the text real quick. And we're going very slowly, okay? When you study, a lot of this stuff might just pop into your mind so fast and be like second nature, right? You've got all that stuff. As you read, you're covering all of these things. But we're kind of just being a little tedious about it. The last question is where? So where are we?
Well, the bottom, the second half of it, you're in Dothan.
Okay.
You know, that's where Elisha, they said Elisha's at.
Right.
Or they were before. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got Syria. We know the king of Syria is somewhere in Syria.
They're probably somewhere in Samaria.
Hmm.
I guess I would assume that because then they take them to Samaria. I mean, they take them to the capital.
Right.
So,
well, that's when his armies come down to try to capture Elisha.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So where the war's taking place, I don't know.
Right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Got it.
Would you say, Caleb?
They're just trying to kill Elisha.
No, I don't think that's what's going on here. It looks like he's trying to get Elisha, like capture him, maybe try to figure out what's going on with this guy.
Now, if he could capture him, then he wouldn't have to worry about him telling the king of Israel what the Syrians were planning to do, and they would be more successful in their battle.
Yeah.
The problem is that he can tell them that they're coming to capture him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I'm reading further, and I don't know if this happened in Samaria because there is a siege on Samaria.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It starts in verse 24, so I don't know if that's.
Well, they end up in Samaria.
Oh, okay, so
that's where Elisha takes the blinded arm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that. Okay.
That's probably removed in time by a little bit. So be a little bit later. I've handed two different atlases that I have or map books going around two different ways. One is the Holman Bible Atlas, and that one, I think page 130, I found some good information. And the other one's the Moody Atlas. What'd you find?
The Old Testament districts.
Okay, that's a good place to be. But what does it say at the top? Just Old Testament districts. So that's like a general map. Go to map 55 in there. Go find map 55. And then once you find the place, you can kind of look at, see if you can find Dothan on there. Some of y'all may have some good maps in the back of your Bibles too that you can find.
I just saw a page number.
Oh, it's right in the middle. So that's pretty good on that one, on the where. Now, just think about words and themes as you look through here. Is there anything, any themes that you see jump out at you? God's power, yeah,
God's
for sure. God's hidden power.
That it's, I mean, it's there, but we aren't aware of it.
All right. Good. Cool.
Elijah's prophecy.
Okay. Let me put these up here. God's hidden power. Elisha's prophecy. Okay.
Elisha tracks the blinded Arameans.
Okay. Sure. Man's, I think that's how you say it.
I put God's mercy.
God's mercy.
On his enemies.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, that was something that when I was studying that I read that Elijah was more like John the Baptist and Elisha was more like Christ, because of the, you know, Elijah was like fire and brimstone, like John the Baptist, you know where you're going, you know. Yeah. But Elisha was, and Elijah was like more to himself, just like John the Baptist, whereas Elisha stayed among people and was always helpful and merciful like Christ. Yeah. And I had never thought about that before, about how, you know, they each were a representation. Yeah. But one of John the Baptist and one of Christ. Wow. I thought that was interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. You know, obviously, Elijah is directly parallel to John the Baptist in the New Testament. Yeah.
Just as John the Baptist was the forerunner of Christ, you know, to let the people know he was coming. And this Elisha learned from Elijah, but then of course he asked for a double portion. So, right. You know, he did even more things. Yeah.
Well, God's all-knowing observation, you know,
yeah, all-knowing. That's a great point.
Well, Elijah's use of prayer too.
Oh, yeah. Prayer. That's good. Excellent thing to notice, because he asked God to strike them blind. He prayed about it. And then prayed that they would open the eyes later. Yeah.
I thought of forgiveness in the sense that once they had the Syrian army and they're blinded, and I know Neva mentioned, was it mercy? Yeah. But I was thinking forgiveness in the sense that they allowed them, I mean, they took care of them and then they allowed them to go back to their master. Yeah. Yeah.
There again, doesn't that remind you of Christ though? Merciful, forgiving.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
we're looking at the character of God in this thing. Yeah.
Salvation. Yeah.
Yeah. Salvation.
That's good.
And rejoicing.
Oh, rejoicing. All right.
Well, trust in God's power too. With faith or trust. Yeah. That whatever situation you're in. I mean, that's more applicable to us today, but in that time, Elisha trusted God to hear him.
That's right. Okay. Well, y'all are jumping ahead a little bit. But that's right. We're doing the principalizing bridge a little bit too. That's good though.
So what was your original question? Was a theme?
Yeah, any recurring ideas or themes or phrases, really. I'm thinking more about looking at the text itself. What do we see in the text?
Isn't this the number 3?
I'm still on number 1, looking at the text itself. I wasn't planning to go quite so deep as where everybody's going. Like,
well, then I'm a little confused.
That's all right. Maybe I should have saved that for later.
What was the difference in?
There's war, right? We're seeing war going on, which has armies involved. Fear, yeah. We see fear involved.
Syria's desire to do away with it.
Yeah. So, how would I write that succinctly here?
A warning.
Syria. I'm just gonna say Syria to conquer.
Okay.
Trying to conquer.
So trying to understand what the journey thing.
Yeah.
So still, because I really did think we were number 3, but
yeah, I did too.
So this is just like taking the super high view of just what's going on in the text.
Yes. Yeah.
So Syria versus Israel.
Right.
Etc. Okay.
Yeah.
So all the other stuff that we listed out would really be, when you said themes, that's why I was thinking the principal key aspects.
Yeah, I probably should not have used that word.
Nate, you said recurring phrases, man of God.
Okay. Man of God. That's good. Cool. I did not notice that.
At least 3 times.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I say that real quick?
Sure.
Just because we're studying this way of studying.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no like buzzer that's going to ring when you accidentally put something in phase 3 versus phase 1. Nobody's going to come out and beat you to 6. So just understanding that there's going to be crossover.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so many of us have studied the Bible for years and years already. So a lot of these things we overlap. We overlap a lot of this stuff.
I was trying to make sure that we're remembering this picture that we're
right.
That we're thinking here.
Yeah.
Well, so when you talk about theme,
yeah,
you use that word. Where do you actually put that in your 1, 2, 3, 4 list?
Well, I mean, I would put it in number 1 because when I think of themes, I'm thinking of what is this, like if I were studying a psalm, I'm looking for recurring ideas that I see, but I'm looking for specific phrases that expose those ideas. So I'm really taking the text apart or analyzing the text and trying to say, okay, what's jumping out at me here? What is God saying through these words? Like one of the themes that I saw was the theme of blindness and opened eyes. In this text. Yeah. And that didn't jump out at me until I had looked at it for a while, actually. And I was like, after I saw it, I was like, huh, that's interesting. It seems to be a theme in the text. It's not just something that happened one time, but
Elijah asked God's help and he's to blind him.
Yeah. So I would put that down.
So he has to open the eyes of his servant so we can see the armies of the Lord.
Yeah. So things like that. Like Josiah said, fear. Fear comes up several times. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. That's good. This is good. We've dumped a lot of stuff out here. Doesn't have to be exhaustive, because then we'll get exhausted. We don't want that. So the way that they encourage you to write out your observations here in the step 1 is to use past tense verbs. And using past tense verbs kind of state what you're seeing. So as you look through the text, how would you relate back the story of what went on? Like we might start with the king of Syria realized someone was telling Israel about his movements, right? Then what?
Elisha to come help.
Well, someone told the king that someone knew his thoughts.
Right. Someone. So someone told him Elisha was the one who knows everything. Yeah.
So it says, go get Elisha.
Yes. So he sent an army to capture Elisha.
Right.
Okay. Then
Elisha prays to God to blind them, I guess.
Right.
And
but even before that, the servant saw the Syrian armies and he was afraid. So I think that's a key event in this text. Then what did God do? Or Elisha prayed to God for what? For that servant.
For his eyes to be open.
Yeah, he prayed that the servant's eyes would be opened and he would see. He saw the chariots of God.
At first he told him not to worry, he told him not to fear because
Right.
there was more with him than against them. And then he prayed to open the servant's eyes so that he could see what Elisha already saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you imagine looking and seeing a mountain full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha?
I would like to see that.
I would too. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the right side.
If you're on the right side, it would be amazing. Yeah. That's a good point.
We're assuming that's where we'd be, Kaya.
Yeah. All right. Now, Miss Lithia, he prayed, let me use the past tense. He prayed that God would strike this army with blindness, which is merciful because God's army could have just wiped them out, right? We know that's true. Then what? Xander, what came next?
After he struck them down,
he
led them to Samaria.
Okay. He led that whole army to Samaria. Then what does Josiah?
And then asked Lord, ask God to open their eyes, and he opened their eyes. And then they found them all in Samaria.
Yikes. We're in Samaria.
Also, this is probably a really large army.
Yeah.
So that's been odd.
Pretty scary.
It's been a bit odd to see a whole bunch of massive army, stumbling around and flying, walking into Samaria.
Right. That would have been odd for everyone. And then, how can we wrap it up? What happens?
Yes, shall we kill them? And he said no.
Yeah.
He gave them food and drink.
He gave them food and drink. Fed the enemy, and sent them home. Okay.
Would you kill those you have captured?
Right. Yeah.
What would be the point?
Yeah, exactly. You've already overpowered them. So.
When there's honor and honorable way.
Yeah.
And then they left them alone for a time.
Right.
They didn't come back.
Right.
But I mean, eventually they did. But you know,
yeah. Okay. So we spent some time looking through the text, right? The more time you spend on this stage, I think, really the better, because I recommend, and a lot of people recommend, that you read it at least twice before you start making any kind of notes. So you read it again. Third time, maybe you say, okay, now I'm going to start circling things and making connections and start answering some of my who, when, where questions. And by then you're fairly familiar with the text, right? You know what you're looking for. And then if you, any of y'all who taught our kids classes at the building over the years, you know those lesson sheets? They've got, at the very beginning of the lesson sheets, they've got like usually 8 to 12 sentences that just basically tell the story, right? That's what we just did.
Yeah, the points.
Yeah. Yeah, it just tells you exactly what happened the whole way down through the story. And that's valuable. You know, it's valuable probably if you're going to teach some students to just write it out in your own words, how the story happened, which is what we just did vocally with each other.
You know, when I was doing it, when the first one went saying, you know, how did each audience approach it? And so I took the story first from the king of Syria and, you know, what they faced as they went through. And then I went with Elisha, and finally with the king of Israel.
Right.
Because I didn't want to be jumping back and forth. And also, since I've never done this before, I didn't know exactly you know, how much we would be jumping back and forth or whatever. So right. I mean, that was just my first time approach at it, to work it from that viewpoint.
It really depends on what age you're teaching too, how much detail you can give, you know, because the younger the kids, the simpler it has to be for them to understand it. But as they get older, they can understand more and more, and you can get into more detail when you teach the older kids.
Yeah, and the older kids, you'd progress more into the principles and, you know, into applications a little bit more. That they'd be understanding deeper applications.
But even small children can understand applications. You just have to put it at their level.
That's right.
It's like, okay, God wants us to obey him. Well, how does a little kid, you know, 2 or 3-year-old obey God? By obeying their parents, because the Bible tells children to obey their parents. So if they obey their parents, they're doing what God wants them to do. And they're going to be pleasing to God because they're obeying their parents.
That's right.
And I mean, you know, it's just different kinds of applications you can make depending on what group you're teaching. But it's amazing what small children can pick up. And, you know, like the story of the Good Samaritan. Well, how can we be a good neighbor? Be nice to people, share your toys with your friends, you know, just, I mean, there are applications even for little kids.
Oh, yes.
And it does help them remember better if you give them an application.
Very good. All right, let's move to step 2 then. Y'all ready? Y'all thought we were already in 3, so I'm gonna erase this stuff that we put here. We might bring up a lot of this, but again, when we get to the process, we're principalizing the bridge. But what we want to do here is we want to measure the width of the river between us and them, right? We want to know what's the difference between what are some of the differences between our time and their time, our culture and their culture?
You mean just as in context, like as far as like how like in this text?
Yeah, like from the people in the text, from the people in the story itself, or the people who would have, the Israelites who would have heard this story to begin with. What are the differences between us and them? That is true, right? They spoke Hebrew, we speak English.
We also do not
Okay, good. Very good. So
well, we're not under.
We don't have physical king, right?
We also don't have prophets.
We don't have I'm going to do shorthand, no prophets today. Yeah, different culture. What's that?
I'm saying this is describing the culture. It's
a little bit, yeah, right.
The patriarchal, male, like much more dominant.
They're still under the old law, right?
There you go. They're supposed to be under the old law, right? But do y'all know much about the Israelite in the north, like what they were following?
Not idols.
Yeah, they had some Baals under Ahab and Jezebel. Of course, it says that Jehoram tore down the Baals.
But he didn't.
But
he didn't.
Yeah, he's still an evil king.
Specifically.
What did the very first king of Israel do as far as worship in the north?
They brought in golden calves.
Golden calves.
Dan and Beth.
Yeah. So golden calves, calf worship. They were worshiping idols. They were not going down to Jerusalem to the temple to worship. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
They had actual wine in the country.
Oh yeah. Great. Wars in the country. We don't have a frame of reference for that, thank God, right now.
It's close.
And even if we did, it would be very different kind of war than they were having.
Wouldn't be, because you have different type of weaponry.
Yeah.
It's much easier to tell what's the same.
Okay, we're gonna get there. When we get yeah, one of these we're gonna start talking about what's the same. Yeah. So y'all, I think y'all have hit most of what I had written down. Yeah.
The way they communicated too, because I mean we have instant communication, okay?
Yeah.
Where when the king sent a messenger out, he may not get a response. A week, however, depending on the distance.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
No mass communication.
No mass communication. Yeah. No telephones at the time.
Or computers.
I did have this was a time period which God worked many signs and wonders through the prophets. So that kind of goes with the prophets, signs and wonders. So miracles were happening. And this is one of the few time periods in history when there was a lot of miracles going on.
Yeah. Elisha did a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were seeing things that they wouldn't have seen.
Mm-hmm. God was working in this time period in a very powerful way. It's interesting. Okay. And, if we use 850 years, we're like 2,870 years removed from these people. So that's a long time ago. Okay, good. Anything else? Measuring the width of that river. So there's a lot of differences between us. So let's talk then about crossing that principalizing bridge. We want to cross the river between us and them. We want to see what principles can we pull out of this text that are going to be useful, that are, and when we say principles, we're talking about things that are true across time. It was true then and it's true now. And it was true everywhere in between.
So
those are principles.
Our list that we
had. I did. Whoops. So we're going to look at that. What is similar between us and them? So here's our similar.
Them meaning the Israelites or the Syrians?
I guess we'll think about the Israelites, but I guess it could be either one. Really.
We worship the same God.
Oh, we worship the same God. That is true. That's true. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to start a new list here. Okay. In fact, I'm going to erase the whole thing, and we'll just refer to our cheat sheets for the steps. So we're on step number 3 right now. Or I'll just erase up to the 3rd one, I guess. Okay. So same God. We worship the same God. That's important.
Who is the same?
Who is the same? Unchanging God. Yeah. Good point.
God's teachings.
God's teachings. Okay. And I would say, as far as his moral law is concerned, yeah. Same moral law because of who he is, right?
The power of prayer.
Power of prayer. That's good. It's interesting to think about that, Jan, because he said, I pray that you will strike these people with blindness. And God did it.
Verse 17, and Elisha prayed.
Yeah. Yeah. And Elijah is used as an example of prayer in the New Testament. He prayed that it wouldn't rain. And it stopped raining for 3.5 years until he prayed again and started it back up. Yes, ma'am.
So it's prayer, but our prayer is based upon God's will.
Yes.
Well, their prayer was too, actually.
Because we think of blindness as something bad.
Right.
Okay. But in the same sense, depending upon the situation, okay, in our text, okay, it was a bad thing, but it turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah.
So it's again, our prayers are based on God's will.
I'm going to put that on here.
Or we ask God to answer according to our will.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does to me. It does to me. Yeah. I think Elijah in both of these cases are praying the will of God. They knew what God's will was, and they prayed according to his will, and God answered them.
Even though we can't see it, God's still working in our lives. We don't always see what he's doing. Sometimes we kind of figure sometimes we have no idea.
God is working. Yeah. God is present. Right? He's present and he's working. Good.
Well, one thing that's the same and different really is they were enemies of God that they were battling. Of course, they were physical enemies, and we really deal with spiritual enemies, which is different.
Good.
But they're still fighting a battle.
They're our enemies.
Yes.
And ours. Yeah. Good thought. Good thoughts. And, you know, some of my things I wrote down go along with these. Like sometimes we need to have our eyes open, right? Just like they did then, we do.
That would be more like step 5.
Well, yeah, that's true. I might be jumping.
Seems like a lot of things can be crossed.
We fear. We fear, they fear. We fear, we need eyes open. Or maybe we would say we are blind sometimes.
Right. We have God's mercy.
Oh yeah. We have God's mercy. Good. Okay, that's really good. Now, what they encouraged folks that push this, you know, have developed this interpretive journey. They say use present tense verbs now. You know, we use past tense verbs to talk about the text and what happened, but now let's use present tense verbs to write out theological principles.
We feel.
Okay. Yeah, we fear.
Fear.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a messy writer. So yeah, those would be the beginnings right there. Yeah.
We pray.
We pray.
We battle. We battle.
Yeah. Okay.
We pray.
Yeah. Good. Just thinking about these, what kind of statements could you make? What would be a theological principle?
Obedience.
Okay. How would you state that?
Well, the moral laws are, I mean, if you don't obey those, then it becomes sin.
Okay. True. Yeah. So
we obey God's laws.
God requires obedience.
God requires obedience. Okay. Yeah. That's a good way. That's a good way to say it. God requires obedience. I'm trying to think about how we connect that from this text, but yeah.
Well, I mean, when you see obedience, I mean, Elisha's working within obedience to God.
Yeah.
At least assuming because God answers his prayers and grants him that path.
Right.
I see Elijah's reliance on God.
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah.
Okay.
Trust.
So
God hears our prayers.
So we should trust. God hears prayer. Good.
The main theological principle that I see in this specific text is God's power. Is that God, and we touched on it, that God's power is in work, even though we don't see it. But there is action and movement there without us seeing it.
Yeah. And I would say also God is present. I mean, both of those go together.
Well, we're talking about in this particular text as far as God's power, and in the text we see God answering Elisha's prayer, okay, and they caused the blindness, and then we see it. So we actually see that power in action, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we know through creation he's powerful.
God acts for his people. How's that? Is that good? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sounds good to me.
Because just saying that he is powerful and he is present, that doesn't necessarily mean he loves and he wants to help, right?
Yeah.
But so we go down to, but he also acts for his people. You know,
well, I was going to say God's love for his people.
God loves, yeah.
For us. Well, he was telling Elisha what was happening. So Elisha would tell the king of Israel.
Right.
So he was warning him. I mean, he was doing other things and just, I don't know if Elisha prayed for that, but somehow God was telling him where the armies of Syria were going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing that God was doing for him. I don't know how you put that. And it may just be the same thing as
protect.
He's acting through his people.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. God protects. There's a lot about God here, isn't there? Protect. How about specific?
It requires our faith.
Yeah.
Because we're noting things that we know about God.
Right.
But it takes us, our faith in what we know, you know, for these other actions, you know, for our obedience to come about.
Okay.
That makes sense too.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does. And you're right. We're saying a lot of very general things here. What are some specific things? What did God do specifically?
When Elisha prayed for him, it says God answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
He heard and answered.
He hears and answers.
He opened their eyes.
Ah, that's a good one. God opens eyes. What else? He also shuts eyes.
Maybe one major thing is that God's will be done. Because this is when wise army sent to seize Elisha and alter. They wouldn't think about it this way, but it would alter the way God was doing things.
Mm-hmm.
But God's will be done. So why was Elisha's prayer answered? Why did this play out? Was because it was so that God's will would be done.
Right.
I mean, because not every prayer is answered the way that we want it to. Elisha could have prayed this prayer and God said no, and dude still be blind, and God still worked it out the way he wanted to.
Okay. God's will be done. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Well, and in this particular situation, he also protected the enemy and not, you know, he didn't let them be destroyed.
Mm.
He sent them away. I mean, there's a lot of people that are non-Christians in today's world.
Yeah.
I mean, even Christian believers that, I mean, we aren't punished for nearly it goes with mercy that Viva has said, but you know, we definitely don't get what we deserve.
But also it's according to God's time. He wasn't ready for Israel to be destroyed. The cup wasn't full. And when it was time,
I mean, even with Syria, even with the Syrian army, they could have been slaughtered.
Yeah.
And he didn't, none of them were killed. They all left.
Right.
And were given.
Yeah.
But later, you know, they did come back.
Well, sure.
You know,
there are times that God does wipe everybody out.
Right. But I'm just saying, it wasn't his time. You know, like our time is not always God's time.
That's right.
God does things in his own time. I mean,
yeah. So those two things are true at the same time, right? God is merciful and God judges. So, you know, while we still have breath and life, we have mercy. We still have mercy while his judgment has not fallen. All right, good stuff. Now, are these timeless principles? Are these true then and now? I think so. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot more than I had on my list. So I'm going to erase this side. I'm going to leave these principles right here. And then step number 4 is consult the biblical map. Okay. So we're going to consult the biblical map, which means what? What's our question? Yeah, how does it connect with the rest of the Bible? Are these principles in sync? And I think we would take a long time if we try to do all of these principles. Number 4, consult biblical map. Okay. Mercy. What comes to your mind across the Bible when you think about God's mercy?
So many things. His plan to save us from the beginning.
All right, his plan to save. Plan to save. Yeah.
He shows his mercy because he gives the Israelites a lot of chances. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always fail.
Much forgiveness. Okay.
I think partly you could go along with that is just God's love. This specific thing, the Northern Kingdom was not doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were still worshiping idols, and he was still protecting them and still loving them. Yeah. So he does the same thing today. He loves everybody, even though everybody is not following him.
Yeah. And
he still protects them. He's raining on the just and the unjust. I'm talking too much.
All right. Rain on just and unjust. So that's a specific passage right there that you could connect to this principle. Yeah. That's good. Anything in the New Testament specifically about mercy that?
From the pictures, you can actually get the landscape is there, but they have destruction in their landscape just as we have destruction in ours. Yeah. With the storms and hurricanes. Oh, yeah. Wiping out cities. Their cities. We actually wiped them out.
Yeah.
Maybe he's doing the same thing for us.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't our attention.
Oh,
yeah. We studied recently the Good Samaritan. Was that on your mind? Yeah. And what was the principle at the end of the Good Samaritan? Who proved to be a neighbor? The one who showed mercy. Yeah, showed mercy. So there's one. There's another one. You might Samaritan. Good Samaritan. Oh, interestingly enough, we're talking about the same area of the country as where Elisha was at the time.
This is kind of, we're told to love our enemies.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't say, they loved the enemy, but they showed the principle of being merciful to them.
Okay.
Because they were their enemies.
Yeah, you're right. Love That goes right.
That's
That
like
goes
the
along with it.
agape love, not not the Philadelphia, not the brotherly love necessarily, but the godly love that you do what's best for them.
Right.
Even though they may not be your best friend, you still do what's best for them.
Yeah. The idea of judgment belongs to the Lord too. That's another one. It doesn't go along with God's extends mercy, but it when we leave room for God's judgment, that's how we can extend mercy. Like Romans chapter 8, Romans chapter 12, where it says, you can heap coals of fire on their heads, whatever that means.
It's
but
righteous judgment. I mean, it's what I think about.
Yeah. But just love your enemies, pray for them, do good for them. Don't return evil for evil, return good for evil. Yeah.
And if you continue to do that, sometimes there will be a point where they will no longer be your enemies. But if they continue to be, then I guess they will have coals on their head because of all the times that they had the opportunity to make things right and didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Well, as you had said earlier, one of the main themes specific to this text is, the blindness and the opening of eyes. And,
yeah.
We still do that. We're very blind to a lot of the things that, we should be aware of.
Yeah.
And so there again, it's praying for God to open your eyes and help you to understand.
Now you're talking good application. So that would be the last step where we would talk about things that we need to pray about here. But how can I connect? Let's talk about God opening eyes and shutting eyes. Where in the Bible, what other passages in the Bible would connect to that idea?
I think about the man who was born blind, and he could see after he could physically see, but he could also see Jesus.
Right.
And the Pharisees who were not blind but could not see.
Good.
That's what my mind. That was the example of the new. The servant, but his eyes were open, and so he could see God. He could see the eyes.
Great. So John chapter 9 talks about that blind man that Jesus healed. And one of the 7 I am statements is in that chapter. I am what? Not that one. The light of the world. Yeah. I am the light of the world, and God turns the light on for people. He opens eyes, literally, both physically and spiritually. And the physical was pointing to the spiritual, as Ms. Neva was talking about. He healed the man of his actual eyesight, but at the end of that chapter, there's an awesome little interaction that Jesus has with that man. So he meets back up with him. The man doesn't know who he is because he was blind last time he ran into him. So he doesn't know what Jesus looks like. And so Jesus meets up with him and he says, do you want to know who the Son of Man is? And he says, who is he that I may believe in him? And Jesus says, well, the one who's talking to you is him. And he says, I believe. Now that was a gift that Jesus gave that man. But the juxtaposition were the Pharisees that were around, and they were like, what are you saying that we don't? Are you saying that we're blind? It's like, the shoe fits, wear it. Not exact, that's not a verbatim what Jesus said, but that's a great passage, I think, that goes to that point. God opens eyes and shuts eyes. Well, what about the shutting of eyes? Is that really a principle?
I think with Saul.
Yeah.
God intentionally shut his eyes.
Acts chapter 9.
For a purpose.
Saul, who would later become the Apostle Paul, right? God blinded him for a minute. 3 days.
Quite a few minutes. And also, we know that if we resist God for so long, then he'll just let us go ahead and be depraved and, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you can only refuse him so long.
Yep. That's a great passage. I think you're right. God will, he has a point where he will say, I'm giving you up. Yeah, Romans chapter 1 talks about him giving them up to their minds, that mindset. And there's another passage, I think in Thessalonians, where he says, he gave them over to a lie that they might believe the lie and be damned. Yeah.
Which one was Romans?
Romans 1, chapter 1. And several times through there, he says that he gave them up to a reprobate mind or something like that.
And we know that God is so merciful. I think it, you know, it would probably, you have to probably be really bad at ignoring God for him to get to that point. Because he is merciful. He gives us so many chances. But I mean, there is a limit.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what, you know, we need to be aware of and try to point out to other people when we try to teach them that there is a limit. That's what scares me for people I love that are not Christians, is that they will get to that limit if they don't come to some recognition.
Don't test the Lord.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's see here. In Acts 13 and verse 11, Paul asked the Lord to strike Elymas blind. Remember Elymas, the magician? He was irritating Paul so much. He asked God, please, or he said, the Lord will strike you. And he did. And then at the end of Acts, here's an interesting passage. At the very end of Acts, in Acts chapter 28, Paul's in prison. It's the very end of Acts. And he had some Israelites, some Jews come to him and were talking with him there in the house where he was confined. And in Acts 28 and verse 25, it says, and disagreeing among themselves, they departed after Paul had made one statement. This is what Paul said. He said, the Holy Spirit was right in saying to your fathers through Isaiah the prophet, go to this people and say, you will indeed hear, but never understand. You will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. So, how are eyes open? What do you have to have opened eyes? Knowledge. Humility.
The heart has to be right.
Okay. But what changes the heart?
The word.
The word. The gospel, right?
That's where the knowledge comes in.
Yeah.
You have to know God's word.
Yeah.
If you do, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, you've already made that.
Yeah.
That step. Yeah.
I know, but I still, after all these years, can't understand why anyone who actually studies the Bible wouldn't understand. I mean, I know that none of us will understand everything until we get to heaven. And then if we want to ask God about it, then, you know, I'm sure he would make us understand it. But you can understand enough to know who God is and who he wants you to be.
Yeah.
Not that we'll ever get it, you know, just right, but that's where God's mercy comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Pharisees and the people Paul's talking to, they knew what he was saying. They chose not to believe, and that's where the soft heart comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they knew, you know.
They hardened their hearts.
They hardened their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they definitely knew that he fulfilled all the scriptures, but they just couldn't get past the point that it wasn't a physical kingdom, I think. If he had been offering them that, they probably would have taken it. Mm-hmm. Eternity, so much better than, you know, something that's just going to last a brief time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, y'all get the idea here, right? That what you're doing is you're just expanding your understanding of these principles by connecting other passages. Yes, sir.
I don't know which passage it is, but it's stated in there, my people perish for they know not my word.
Right. Yeah. I think that's Hosea, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah.
So
that's right.
This might be where like a concordance or something, where you once you find your terms that you're looking at, like you're looking at this list, and you were trying to study across the Bible, that might be really hard initially.
Sure, right.
So a concordance, or like those apps that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were talking about mercy, then you could put in mercy and it'll show you the passages that.
Right.
So using those tools to help start to see how the picture comes together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so we won't belabor this point. We could go through, you know, we can pick out other principles here and flesh them out, but you could take a very, very long time. And that's one of the cool things about Bible study. You can spend as much time on this passage as you want. I mean, you really could. You could do a little topical study on each and everything that you come across in the passage, you know. But all right, finally though, we'll just wrap it up with this application stage. Step number 5: grasp what this text means in our town. We've already talked a little bit about it, right, as we're connecting principles across the Bible. But what are some applications that we could write down? Say, this is a principle that Christians today and I today should live out.
Nothing can match God's strength.
Knowing that nothing can match God's strength. Okay, how would I make an application out of that? Like,
trust always in God.
Okay, I should trust always in God. And we can be more specific too. Like, how would we? What are ways that we trust?
Ask in prayer.
Yeah, that's good. So ask in faith. Good. And really believing, knowing that he will answer us.
One thing that I think about in trusting God is in obedience.
Okay.
Because if you trust him,
yeah,
you know, we know that he demands obedience.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I guess I'm thinking, and maybe this is too personal. Maybe this gets too personal, but like I would ask the question, how should I obey today? Like what's going on in my life that I need to?
Well, I think at least keeping it in the context of what we read in 2 Kings, it's trusting when we don't see how God is working. When we pray and our eyes aren't open, we don't see exactly how God is answering prayer. But, you know, we're in the middle of our own storm, our own conflicts, and we're afraid. And it's reading the story and being reminded that in the middle of that storm of conflict, but you're also in that middle of that storm of God's power and God's work.
Don't be afraid in whatever conflict. Mm-hmm. Like, just remind ourselves, I need to trust God in this. Maybe Miss Angie needs to think about that right now, and Cooper, Jack, and people, any of us who are going through, physical troubles or family troubles, turmoil. Mm-hmm.
When we see other people that are not Christians having all this wonderful stuff and no problems, and then we're having problems, and we shouldn't ask, well, why me? Because the rain's on everybody.
Yeah.
They have it now, but when they leave, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have an army surrounding us right now.
Well, we do.
I was going to say,
no, we just can't see it. Yes, we just can't see it.
No, I know.
Qualify my statements.
No.
Good.
I was going to say, but we do have support of our Christian family members.
True. Absolutely. Yeah.
We don't have the angels, like in this story.
Yeah.
But we have each other.
But do we? I mean,
I think we do have angels. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think that's what we can't see. Christian families is what we can see.
Right.
Yeah. And just like we trust God to take care of us, we also trust His mercy when we don't do things exactly right, and ask His forgiveness. We trust in His mercy.
Yeah.
Well, I think of things like I'm in bed and I can't sleep because I'm worried about something that I have absolutely no control over. And so what I have to remember in that moment, at that time, so I can get to sleep, is that God will handle this. I can't do anything about it. I have, it's almost a physical thing of saying, okay, God, I trust you. I mean, and sometimes even that your thoughts still go back to this other, yeah, but what if, and trying to control it when you can't. But that's what I think of stuff like this. You're talking about normal, everyday things that you go through. And that's, for me, that's, sometimes when I'm going through stuff, I can't turn my mind off. And that's when I have to trust. That's when I have to believe, the things that I've been spouting, then I have to actually believe them and put them into my heart and let it go, and God will handle it, and I can go to sleep.
I think that's one of those things we all struggle with.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we all want to get it just right, but I just remind myself that I'm not depending on myself, because if I do, I'll fail. But if I trust God, He'll take care of it.
Right.
Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, from your own intelligence, rely not in all your ways, be mindful of Him. He will make straight all your paths.
That's right.
All understanding.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I actually have that verse in my hall bathroom.
Yeah.
It's stuck under a little owl that has potpourri in it.
What about applications about God shutting in eyes and opening eyes? What can we make out of that?
People coming to God, people walking away from God.
Yeah. I'm thinking about applications about us specifically. How do we connect with that? Is there anything that we...
Sometimes we come to realization about the Bible, and sometimes we just can't see it.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Sometimes we can discern a message, sometimes we can't see it.
Okay. Did you have something, Ray?
I'm thinking.
Are you thinking? Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I keep thinking,
Well, we said, how does God open hearts? Through the word, through the gospel.
Yeah. So we have to see and read the gospel in order to have our eyes open.
So at a personal level, I should be really drinking of his word, right? And that's how my faith will grow. But then, do I have any responsibility from that point?
Sure.
Yeah, this is how other people are going to have their eyes open. So I really should be sharing this word with other people.
They know they're supposed to be doing it too, so you remind them.
There you go. Yes, sir. Yep.
A few years ago, I went to a couple of things that really, I didn't know how it was going to work out. And that's how God opened my eyes to do certain things. And it took a long time. I didn't know if it was ever going to work. But I trusted him.
Yes.
And I kept the faith. And finally came through.
Praise God.
I know that he answers prayers.
Yes. Yes. And how is this the servant's eyes open in the story? Through prayer. And so there's another thing. Well, I mean, we know the gospel opens eyes, but we should probably pray that, people's eyes are opened as well. Because it may be that I can't directly do anything to open somebody's eyes. I may not be able to do a thing. I could be shoving the Bible in their face and telling them every day, but maybe they're never going to listen to me. But I can pray to God and ask God to open some eyes.
Only the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And give the glory to him.
And give him the glory.
Do not take it on yourself.
Give thanks.
Amen. Yeah.
So that brings to mind to me the story of the prodigal son. Because in that picture, if you parallel it, the prayers for that son, it was that he had put himself in a situation where his father could not directly influence him. Mm-hmm. But the assumption, I guess, is that the prayers led him to that lowest point, to where he got to the point where I'm just saying his eyes were open to some degree.
When he hit rock bottom.
But it took that experience in that situation to put him in that position.
Yeah.
Well, look what happened to Saul.
That's right.
Yeah, his eyes open.
Yeah. That's right. He had to be knocked off his horse. So I think that was a good journey today. I have a second paper to quickly pass. I should have given this to Kathy before she left. I'll email it. But I want to give this. This is a New Testament passage, and we'll just do this one more time next week. And here you go. Here you go. And this one is Luke chapter 1, 39 through 45. And it has to do with Mary going to meet Elizabeth. And I think it'll be a good one to share. Okay, so, and it's shorter. It's a lot shorter. So, and it's New Testament. So there will be very different things to think about in this one. What's that? I did, yes. Yeah. And I made it bigger. Easier to see. So, all right.
Well,